Hello, YouTube. Hope you're all doing well. Ross here. Time for another Wednesday Waffle. Wednesday Waffle number 3. Don't have a whole lot to ramble on about tonight, but a couple of things that I came across this week that I thought were interesting, and I'd try to tie them into our discussion of the arts. Whether they actually tie in or not, why not? We'll shoehorn some stuff in there. So anyways, I've been watching a couple videos, lectures, interviews with a Theodore Dalrymple. Very interesting guy. Some of you who are familiar with him might be wondering, well, why are you listening to that guy? He's a destroyer of the Guardian, denouncer of Fabianism, not the sort of person you want to be associating with mentally. Well, I thought he had some nice ideas, and there was a couple that, as I said, I'm going to try and shoehorn into our viewpoint on music and art. He had a discussion with Jordan Peterson, and in that, of course, he was talking about social issues. That's primarily what he deals with. It seems to be anyways from what I came across, but Dalrymple, that is. Peterson as well, of course. But they were talking about how there's this tendency for people to, maybe out of sentimentality or misplaced empathy, whatever the case is, that's not really relevant, but to try to avoid being censorious. Or maybe just because it's good not to be censorious. I don't know. It's probably is one of those things that it's on the face of it a good thing to aspire to. But anyways, in their attempts to avoid being censorious, they fail to make any judgments whatsoever. Now, Dalrymple made this quote, which I thought was very interesting. He says, "If you pretend you are not making judgments, you are in fact facilitating the worst judgments." And he went on to give the reason for this being basically that everybody makes judgments, whether they claim to or not. Just by making a choice, you're making a value judgment, a call. So whether a person tries to avoid it or not, they're going to, just in their own life choices. And if you, pretend that you're not, well, then you're allowing bad judgments to pass without question. And of course, that can have a lot of consequences down the road. But I thought that was a good thing to keep in mind when it comes to critiquing art and music. It seems like a lot of people don't like to cast aspersions on certain lesser works of music. I don't know if I don't think it's out of empathy per se, but maybe it's just because it's such thin pickings right now that, if you don't want to be depressed about it, you want to look for the good in it. That's certainly understandable, but in doing that, it just facilitates more of this mediocre music. I've gone on ad nauseum before about, how bland it is and banal melodies and all of that. Well, if you don't judge that, and if people just let it pass, or if they give it high marks based on something else like the production or how it compares to their contemporaries, which are also awful, well, that's just facilitating more of this stuff, that people aren't being held to a standard. In fact, I think the music industry caught onto this idea a while back, where it used to be the idea was you would try to assign acts, you'd have A&R, you try to find them repertoire that was good, try to find them a very good song, or acts that already had good songs or could be counted on. And I think they gradually, and of course the idea was that if you came across a good song, Mickey Most talks about this a lot in various interviews, then that's how you got a hit, and that's how the record company made money, was off of these hits. You had a great song, people loved it, they bought 1 million copies, the label and the artist and everyone made money. I think they kind of figured out that they could somehow still make a reasonable amount of money without actually having the hits. They kind of were able to assembly line it, basically turn music into McDonald's cheeseburgers or Oreo cookies or something, where you can just go through this process and it's all more or less the same thing, but it's good enough that it pleases the artistic palette, musical palette of most people, or enough of an aggregate that they can still make money off of this sort of thing. That that's the impression I'm getting anyways, that there's no need to take any risk on any truly innovative art, because yeah, you might hit a home run or it might flop. Whereas if we just keep pressing out the same thing that we know that a certain amount of people are going to pay money for, then we can keep the business afloat. So that's a sad state of affairs. Continuing though with my Dalrymple rabbit hole that I was going down, I watched a lecture he gave on Turgenev's Fathers and Sons, a novel I haven't read, but I certainly want to after he sang its praises and, of course, went into quite a bit of detail on it. Sounds pretty amazing. But anyways, in there's a character, Bazarov, who is this sort of nihilist, rationalist character. And it was interesting that he mentioned that this Bazarov looked down his nose on, had disdain for the arts, poetry, Pushkin. He poo-pooed that, playing the cello, music. He tried to avoid these things because he felt that it tempered his revolutionary ardor. He wanted to tear the system down, and he found that the arts tended to distract from that and to get in the way of his being able to keep up that same level of anger at society. And in fact, this was echoed actually in Vladimir Lenin later on. He also tried to avoid listening to music, did it as little as possible. It wasn't really because he didn't have an appreciation for it, it's because he did have an appreciation, and he realized that the beauty in the music kind of steered him away from recognizing the evils in the world, fully feeling them. And so he didn't want it to put a damper on what he was trying to do as far as the revolution and his activism and so forth. So I thought that was interesting. I thought that in a way is a recommendation for music in the arts, in that it helps people to not take societal problems so seriously. Not that they shouldn't be taken somewhat seriously, but maybe if that can be mixed with having an appreciation for the good things in the world as well, might allow people to be a little bit more clear-headed about these things. Or less clear-headed, whatever leads to less problems, I guess, is to be hoped for. But anyways, that was just a couple thoughts that I had on there, insights from Theodore Dalrymple. Turgenev, I guess. But yeah, that's everything for this week. Was something I wanted to... Oh, yeah. I wanted to let everybody know, all 2.5 of my viewers, that I also have some writings on Wattpad. I'll put a link below for that if you're interested in checking it out. It's mostly comic writings, satire of a satire. It's kind of inspired by Lawrence Stern's approach to the anti-novel with Tristram Shandy, stuff like that. So it's very freewheeling. Of course, not up to Stern's standards, but who is? So anyways, if that seems like something you might enjoy, feel free to check it out. Otherwise, have a great rest of your week.